3, 2, 1.
New York, NY. LaunchPod starts now.
Welcome to the New York LaunchPod, the New York Press Club award-winning podcast, high new startups, businesses, and openings in the New York City area. I'm Hal Cooper-Smith, and in this episode, we speak to David Hall and Jordan Klein, co-founders of a company called Park and Diamond, which reinvented the bicycle helmet. You know the bicycle helmet, that goofy-looking large piece of hard plastic that no one wants to carry around? Well, these two entrepreneurs thought a lot about why bicycle helmets were so bad and invented a helmet that looks cool and actually folds up to the size of a water bottle. And a water bottle, unlike a helmet, is something that almost everyone carries around. Here's Jordan Klein.
We're not, out here just trying to push product and sell as many units. We're solving for usage, right? We want somebody to buy this and we want them to use it.
Having people wear bicycle helmets is personally important to Jordan and David. So let's go to the interview. And my first question to David Hall about just how and why they got started.
So for us, it all started about 3 years ago with my sister Rachel, and she was riding her bike through the intersection Park and Diamond, now the namesake of the company Park and Diamond, and she was actually hit by a car. And when she spent the next 4 months in a coma and then was recovering and now continues to recover, we were really left with the question, why wouldn't you wear a bike helmet? And with that question in mind, we just rethought a helmet from the ground up.
Yeah. And considering the fact that we were two engineering students at the time, myself wanting to work in the automotive industry, designing safety cells for cars, Dave in the defense industry, we kind of figured that we had the skill set to bring something to market. And so, very early on, we started leveraging all of the research capability that Virginia Tech had, as well as you'd be surprised the amount of things you can get done when you call companies and say you're a student. They will tell you anything in the world. And so we were able to really rapidly iterate early on and had the fortune of winning a lot of pitch competitions, which gave us a decent amount of seed funding, which allowed us to continue that research and development.
I definitely want to go into the story and the meaning of why wearing a helmet is very important to you, David. But what fascinates me about all of this is that, just like I started off, everyone has wanted a collapsible bike helmet. And I feel like people have been kind of trying to do this for ages. You said you reinvented a bicycle helmet from the ground up. Why are you guys the ones that were able to do it or able to do this in a very elegant way as opposed to other big companies?
That really came down to the first step we took. And it started with, at the time, over 300 interviews. Now at this point, well over thousands of customer interviews. And the pain points that really stop people from wearing helmets are kind of intuitive. It's really 3 points of the inconvenience of the big bulky helmet carrying it around. It's the aesthetics of big black foam on your head. And then it's the comfortability of bulky rigid foam. So there are some people out there who've tried to take a step to solve this problem. The challenge is they might solve one of the pain points, might try to address one of the pain points at the cost of the other pain point. So they might have something that collapses well but doesn't look good, or something that looks good but doesn't feel good. Any one of those combinations. So there really hasn't been a solution that solves all of the problems.
And I think the answer to why us is that we were, outsiders to this industry, right? We weren't beholden to any one particular technology or process or supply chain. We didn't have a couple hundred employees that had, enjoyed their life for the past 25 years and wanted to continue that.
You're not a part of Big Bicycle.
We're not a part of Big Bicycle, right? Definitely not something you hear talked about a lot. But essentially, because we were outsiders and because we kind of came from the background, particularly of automotive crash test safety, which has been under, a huge area for improvement, right? You just look even 5 or 10 years ago, and the difference between fatality rates 5 to 10 years ago for new cars sold versus today is huge. Particularly, there really used to be like a socioeconomic boundary or barrier to automotive safety, right? So your high-end, like Mercedes-Benz S-Class, 7 Series, things like that, had these safety features that your Toyota Camrys didn't have. And what you've seen is that has moved down market as those technologies have become cheaper and more ubiquitous in cars, which has led to really safe vehicles, right? Things like that haven't happened in the bicycle helmet industry, right? There's been no carryover of that type of, technology and technical innovation into personal safety devices. So we essentially kind of had the opportunity to look at that space and figure out, hey, can we use this as a model for what we can do in really, frankly, the personal protective space? And our passion and our initial reason for starting the company was a bicycle helmet. So that's why the first product really looks like that, per se. But that's essentially what it is. Really, our engineering thesis was, what happens if you're willing to spend a little bit more money on BOM cost and the physical product itself and research and development, and you take the engineering methods from the automotive industry and aerospace industry and apply it for the head, and basically view this as the safety cell of a car just on somebody's hat.
And you were thinking about all of this as college students.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you came across this problem, figured out this problem. You say, we want to design a bicycle helmet from the ground up, do these interviews. Where do you start after the interviews in terms of materials, everything else? So
we actually met in a material science class where I think our professor legitimately got paid $1 every single time he said CES EduPack. And so, which is a material selection software. So essentially, it, for engineers, condenses different material properties and allows you to do a more efficient method of selecting materials for any given engineering problem.
Everyone in that class is loving that joke right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Clark's MSc 2034 class. But seriously, I mean, and at the time, we were seniors in college. Both of us had worked, in industry, had internships, had co-opted, and so we're pretty familiar with a product development timeline. And so in terms of where do we start, really you just kind of have to think about what are the fundamental, criteria for what we were trying to do, right? And we got that from these customer discovery interviews. A lot of just feasibility analysis in the get-go, right? The concept of putting it in a water bottle came from the Japanese manufacturing principles of Kaizen, which is if you think about quality in the sense of getting the intended use done every single time rather than just fit and finish on a car, for example, but in terms of manufacturing, in terms of process, the correct tool has to be within arm's reach of, whatever action is going to be performed. Otherwise, the action won't get done correctly, right? So, if you don't have the right wrench, a worker will use the wrong wrench rather than using the correct one, leads to a bolt not being tightened correctly, and things like that lead to mechanical failures in the future. But if you kind of think about it in the sense of really what that means is the intended use or the intended action every single time, you have to have the right tool at point of use. And that's really fundamentally what we thought was broken about the bicycle helmet, was that it was almost never at point of use. And if we think back to, why we started the company, Rachel, for example, owned a bicycle helmet. And it was sitting in her dorm room when she was riding through the intersection of Park and Diamond because it wasn't available at the point of use. And so we kind of thought, where can we put a bicycle helmet that is on every single bicycle, that's on every single bag, and what's a form factor that's intuitive that we're used to really just carrying around with us? And that was the water bottle. So the first thing we did was just did some basic math. Can we fit enough protective material in the shape of a water bottle? And we decided, and we found, yes, you could. And so we knew that we were solving for a volume efficiency problem, which was a problem that nobody else really ever had an inclination to solve for in the bicycle helmet space. And so that's really kind of where we started. Once you've defined the problem, it's really just kind of about iteration at that point. And for people like me who do not know what volume efficiency problems are, what is that exactly? Well, it's not a specific type of problem, but essentially we're solving for efficiency, right? We wanted to build the most efficient design, and how do you define that? Was a bicycle helmet that could collapse into the minimum amount of volume above all other challenges, right? In terms from that pure technical sense of it fitting in the shape of a water bottle, right? That was the idea. But people have thought about that must be for ages. Everyone who's put on a helmet has thought about that, and everyone else who's designed a helmet has thought about that. How do we collapse it down? I feel like there are lots of different iterations. No one else, and you guys cracked it. And that's totally true. And I think really, that came from being outside and being flexible as a business of being able to look at materials that were outside of the materials typically used in the helmet industry. We weren't beholden to using these legacy materials, and we were able to build IP and transition technology from other industries, and really, generate our own material, which is significantly more efficient. And talking through a technical thing, I mean, just from having something retain elastic strain energy is really inefficient for mitigating impacts. Essentially, not only is it not helping, it's actually counterproductive in terms of volume efficiency, right? And that's really what it comes down to, right? Because you've got this material that's retaining and then releasing energy during an impact. So not only is it not helping, but it's actually being counterproductive to the rest of the material that's being deformed. So if you can create a material that doesn't do that, you pick up efficiency right away.
I'll take your word for that. But let's talk about the material a little bit more in depth. What is it, and how did you find it?
So really the material, and we're asked all the time, what is the actual material? And it is our proprietary composite. It's our secret sauce, if you will. But as Jordan mentioned, it has been adapted from the aerospace industry. And one of the questions we get is, how is it actually safer? Because sure, it's thinner, sure, it's lighter, sure, it looks better, but how does it actually work? And it does come down to the helmet during the impact. One of the ways is we reduce the bounce. So it's kind of like the catchphrase of it doesn't bounce as much. But what that comes down to is, say your head hits the ground, conventional material, your head would actually bounce back up. There would be some, as Jordan said earlier, strain energy, elastic strain energy, that then is returned to your head, causes more acceleration, more movement, corresponds to more injury. So by being able to absorb that absorb that impact energy in more of a permanent manner and in a plastic manner, it allows for what could be greater protection, less injury. So that's really the mechanics behind how the composite works.
And how did you come up with the design for the composite? How many iterations did you go through? I know it's a secret sauce, so we won't have to go that into it, but how did you know, all right, this is the material?
Don't let our casual New York style here fool you. We enjoy technical conversations. But so essentially we spent a lot of time iterating. So, we formed partnerships with companies like ANSYS, which is one of the industry leaders for simulation software. So we were able to do this because we came around in a confluence of a couple things. So one, HPC time is significantly cheaper than it used to be. You can leverage, simulation software on a scale that was previously not possible. So that allowed us to non-destructively iterate and design things very early on and very cost efficiently, and build a knowledge base on these relatively difficult to model and understand phenomena and materials. So that, for one, allowed us to make a lot of progress where traditional companies in the space might not have a core competency. So that was definitely very useful. And that was really a direct application of some of the previous work that we had done in our lives through partnerships with these companies. So, they gave us hundreds of thousands of dollars of software, for example, as an early stage startup, because they believed in what we were doing. They wanted to support us. So you can leverage things like that early on. And that allowed us to really go through a lot of iterations, finding suppliers and things like that, as well as that we could leverage. And then really just a lot of, sleeves up work, doing destructive testing and trying to get agreement between what you predicted and what actually physically happened.
What are the materials that go into the composite?
So that'd be kind of, the ingredients are also kind of part of the whole secret sauce thing. I think from a design standpoint, though, kind of what's important is that, how much improvement we've made. Right. And it's really actually remarkable. We were just thinking, as I'm sure a lot of people were reflecting upon 2018 this past week, just in the past year, the amount of improvement that we've been able to make, on the product itself, has been awesome. And it's really something that we're really happy about because, at the end of the day, we're solving for a problem harder than just the sale of a product, right? We're not, out here just trying to push product and sell as many units. We're solving for usage, right? We want somebody to buy this and we want them to use it. And that's actually an order of magnitude harder. And so, for every small incremental gain we get in the product, we feel like we're getting a slightly higher usage rate out of it, right? And I think one of the things that we're most excited about is when this product starts shipping, is seeing kind of what that usage rate really looks like. Were we right that this form factor was good enough to really create this paradigm shift in helmet usage, where this isn't just getting left on a shelf or a drawer, for example?
And do you have a patent on your secret sauce?
Yeah, so we have everything from international patents to U.S. patents to trademarks to design patents. Luckily, that whole side's been buttoned up, and what's really valuable about it is, since it's not just a little tweak on a conventional helmet or just, a new mousetrap, it's really a product platform. So that's why having an IP platform that really encapsulates the entire product really lends to future innovation and being protected with that innovation.
And how long did it take to develop this?
3 years, pretty much.
3 years. So back to the story. A lot of people have this idea. I want to do something. David, obviously you had a tragedy in your family. It has a big impact on your life. People deal with grief in different ways and say, I want to do something, but kind of lose that motivation, even in the darkest times. What made you guys push through 3 years, which is a very long time in product development, to say, you know what, we are going to be the ones that crack this egg that no one else has, that Big Bicycle has not, using legacy materials, everything else like that. Obviously, I'm sure things didn't go as planned all the way through. What made you push through?
It really came down to not only the mission, but everybody who supported us with the mission, whether it was our friends and families, my sister's professors at school, my sister's friends, just the idea of we're going to solve this problem. And I know for a fact if Jordan and I even thought about the idea of quitting, finding something else to do, I'm pretty sure everybody would have had us by the collar and made us stick to this. Because it really comes down to what we're trying to solve just isn't about us two in this room. It isn't about my sister and us three. It's really bigger than that, and it encapsulates a lot of people.
And what was one of the darkest days in terms of thinking, you know what, we aren't going to be the ones that do this? Did you have one of those moments?
It's a good question. Darkest day. That
is a good question.
We don't get asked that a lot.
There were
a lot of times when we were,
a lot of close calls.
Iterating something or just couldn't explain why things were happening. But as a business, I think there's two separate parts of this. There's, kind of the product development, there's the engineering, there's the nerd, like the science, and there's that. And that's definitely one bucket. But that's actually nothing but a barrier to entry of running the business, right? The business itself doesn't actually care about any of that. It's kind of binary almost, right? Either it will work and you can ship it, or it won't work and you can't ship it. When and how much it costs and unit economics, yeah, that matters, but certainly to a lesser extent, very early stage. So as a business, I think we were really efficient about how we were able to get where we are. In terms of product development, I don't think we were very efficient. We definitely spent a lot of time and effort on things that ended up not working out. In terms of the darkest days, though, I think really at the end of the day, there were times where, it could have come back that the particular materials we wanted to use or processes we wanted to use were too expensive. We had a situation where some of our tooling was going to be, 5x what we thought it was going to be. And, we would have found a way to power through that, but that's hard because at the end of the day, we really want this to be an accessible product, and we want to be able to deliver this for the lowest possible price so that we can grow this and protect as many people as possible. Because it's really not lost on us that if we, made this, for example, a $300 product, for the sake of margin, that there would be people that could have bought this at $100 or at $80 or at $79 that didn't because of price. And what was the point of the exercise then? We didn't really achieve our mission if that's what we had done. I think that's probably the darkest day that I can think of right now, other than the pitch competition in 2000.
that was the first. That's what came to mind.
So the first pitch competition I ever did live, I completely word vomited and looked at Dave, was like, "Take the microphone." We then won the next 7 in a row for $200,000, so it's okay, but that was rough.
And now you guys have this great dynamic between the two of you, and you're very eloquent and talking about the product, and we're certainly going to get into the business side. I definitely want to go into that. Obviously, you touched on that there are two parts. We talked a lot about the manufacturing, and then there's the business side. So where is the product going to be manufactured?
So when it comes to the manufacturing side of it, it's something where we have suppliers on the west coast of the U.S., we have suppliers in Europe, suppliers as well as final assembly in Southeast Asia. So needless to say, we both have status on airlines and fly far too much. But that's been one of the biggest obstacles to tackle is the supply chain, the manufacturing, the distribution, really the back-end work behind making a product that's taken the last 6 months of full-time effort on.
I'll amend that to the darkest time. The darkest time was the beginning of 2018 when we were what I would describe as just trudging through the mud.
Started 2018?
Yeah, the start of 2018. We were talking about this last week.
Yeah.
Essentially when you talk about these manufacturing, these supply chain things, all this kind of back office stuff that doesn't look sexy in media, that you can't, go to a bar and talk about with your friends because they're totally not going to get it. That's actually really hard to, motivate yourself to go to work. Frankly, we were working like 7 days a week. At that point, we didn't have any of the external validation that we have today, right? We hadn't launched the product. We didn't even know if people really wanted this thing, right? We just knew that we needed to push the needle forward to get the opportunity to share this with the world. And we felt that since we're really asking people to trust us with their safety, that when it came time to launch the product, it needed to be the absolute final version. A lot of crowdfunding projects, throw up this like prototype that is super early, and then they run into all the problems that we already solved like a year ago, right? Where they go to a manufacturer and the manufacturer looks at them like, yeah, that's not going to work. Or you can't do this process, or that process costs too much money, or it's too labor intensive, or you can't scale it above 5,000 units a year, things like this, right? And so, I would say we probably spent about a good 2 months where like it felt like probably actually 3 months, it felt like no progress was being made. And then in 1 week, like everything happened. Like everything went well. We got into this accelerator, which was funded by BMW, called Urban X. That was an amazing experience for 6 months. Definitely did a lot to push the business forward. We got back, from Asia. We did a trip to Asia, which was really productive. That's when we really started getting our first, inkling of what we could do on a cost perspective. And that came back so that we could offer at the price point that we can right now, which is really exciting because it completely could have been a thing where the unit economics would have only worked out at $250 plus because we're using materials that are significantly more expensive than any other helmet company. And we're not selling it for the high end of the market, right? We're selling it priced very competitively compared to a lot of these other companies that are out there. And we really needed to be tight and efficient about how we were doing things in a manufacturing context to be able to do that.
And then where did you ultimately choose the place to manufacture, and how did you choose that?
So that selection process, which lasted at that point months because it involved going there, screening the companies in person.
I think 9 months.
Yeah, 9 months from starting the process to finally walking the factory floor with them. Took easily 9 months. And it's a game of, specifically hardware manufacturer, it's a game of you have to go there, you have to meet the person, you have to do a sample, you have to do another sample, see what they're about, they see what you're about. It's very much, it's a commitment both monetarily, time-wise for both sides of the party. So it's really a commitment. So then at that point, it takes months to figure that out, find the right person. But what's really encouraging, and maybe this consoles other hardware companies, once you do have that team in place, you have a factory, you have the supply chain, it's really, really rewarding to get a sample back and be able to play with the product in your hands.
Well, we have a product here. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
You brought it in. I'm very excited to see it. I've seen it on the video. Can you describe what it looks like for people who have not seen it? People are in their cars listening to this on their headphones. What does this thing look like before I put it on my head with the headphones on?
Sure, absolutely. So it looks like a baseball hat.
Looks like a baseball hat. I agree with that.
Exactly. And so I think one of the three, just kind of to build the basis, the product is composed of 3 layers. There's the outer layer, or the skin, as we call it. There's the core layer, and then there's the inner liner, which is really there for comfort. The inner and the outer layer are both machine washable. The headphones fit.
Well, I want to talk about that. We'll get to that.
Yeah. We've actually thought about that particular use case if somebody wears noise-canceling headphones over their helmet, whether or not we'd recommend doing that.
Well, I'm just wondering if the ears are protected. If you fall on your side, you're going to get scrapes on your ears. You could say what you will about legacy bicycle helmets, but they do protect your ears.
Right. So this helmet protects the same coverage area as a traditional helmet. So it would, given any impact, perform just as well for protecting the head in terms of a coverage area perspective. But kind of back to kind of what the product looks like per se, is that really what we focused on was making something that was indistinguishable from normal headwear at 5 or 10 feet. And we thought a lot about, in terms of, user interaction in the product, that to know that this thing is a safety product in your hand, right? It has to have a certain amount of, physical rigidity to it. We didn't want it to be very soft. So you'll notice when you unfold it, it sits unfolded on the table. So that was actually a design change that we made. That doesn't make a difference from a safety perspective per se, but it makes a difference from a user experience and what the product really feels like to have in your hand. So that was a really important thing I think that we had changed about the product about a year ago. And so from that perspective, I think are incredibly proud of where we have come from the product standpoint. And I think what you'll notice, I think actually one of the things that dropped out of all this that we didn't really prioritize was how breathable it was. Our material is more breathable than traditional legacy material. So the entire helmet itself is ventilation. And when we shot the video that you're talking about, it was like 98, 99 degree, hot, humid August summer day in Brooklyn. Over in Cobble Hill, and both of the actors and actress that were riding the bike were blown away by how comfortable and how cool it was, despite the fact that it was 90 plus degrees, to the point where the makeup artist barely had to do any touch up on their forehead.
It's very thin and light. It's hard for me to believe that this is going to protect me if I fall. I believe you guys, but for someone who's just wearing this, it just feels like kind of an old school, like leather football helmet with your secret sauce composite materials.
And really, for the design approach to the helmet, the outside is supposed to be inconspicuous, supposed to be a hat. You wouldn't think twice about it. But what's fun is the inside, if you take the top layer off, that's where we can really let the engineering show and kind of show the engine underneath the hood. And once you take that off, you can see the tessellation, you can see the mosaic of the rigid tiles. And in there, you can feel that there's thin fabric that allows for ventilation in critically designed areas. So that's really where we can kind of convey the engineering to it. And what's been fun is some people have even said they like that design so much they'd want to show it off without the hat.
Yeah, and an important note about the hats, too. Something that was really important to us was to have this match people's outfits. And so we wanted the outer layer to be interchangeable so that, you can get a second skin, and let's say you want to go all maroon, to support Virginia Tech, even though we lost their bowl game, you can do that, right? And that's something that we're kind of delivering to the space that really hasn't existed in the mainstream at all, and that's something that we're really excited about. We've gotten a lot of great feedback in our product crowdfunding. We sold a lot of these skins, which was great feedback.
You sold a lot of skins. You sold a lot of helmets. I took off the skin. Looks like you have a lot of triangles here, like a geodesic dome.
Yeah.
How did you...
Sure. So we actually kind of created our own software, more or less, to optimize this. So actually, the equation for how a helmet behaves is relatively simple. If you understand how your material is going to behave and you understand the area and volume engagement, you basically control everything. And so the design is all about control. But essentially that's kind of what enabled, this specific design that you see here, and how we know, how well we're doing in terms of optimization, which is important from a product standpoint.
Can you optimize and control for helmet hair? Are people still going to get helmet hair?
I think helmet hair actually, to be frank about it, has a lot to do with moisture buildup as well. So theoretically, this is going to be as good for helmet hair as you could possibly get. I mean, something that we can look into in the future as a product improvement. And that's why we love the fact that the product's modular, right? So those inner liners, you take it out, throw it in the washer. We'll sell replacements as well. So, if, for example, we find in future product testing that having like a specific anti-static coating, on that fabric liner really makes a difference for helmet hair, then that'll be like a $10 or $15, accessory you'll be able to buy for the product if it's a problem, or maybe you just dig the helmet hair look.
Yeah, I feel like no one digs the helmet hair look though.
You know what's worse is the headphone hair. Seriously, this is like the bane of my existence. I listen.
Are
to
you just saying
all...
that because you're wearing headphones right now?
No, seriously. Like I mean, this is gonna sound crazy, but I really like think about my headphone choice in the morning, whether I'm going to go with like in-ear headphones or over-the-ear headphones, based on whether or not we're going to be doing like something on camera, if I'm going to go like out after, because you'll get like this little like indent on your head from your headphones the entire day, which I think is totally worse than helmet hair, to be totally honest.
So you just put on your helmet and then put the headphones over, which you've apparently solved for as well, because I was able to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, there we go.
Problem solved. So I didn't need to work for your company. So why did you choose the crowdfunding model as your initial distribution?
Sure. So crowdfunding is a really, really interesting space to be in. So one, one of the things that's really awesome is you get feedback in a way that you can't get doing almost anything else, right? And when you have a mission-driven company and a story like we do and a product that really resonates, crowdfunding is a very efficient tool for you. And we're really grateful to all the people that believed in us, right? There's kind of this emotional attachment beyond just the transaction of, physically pre-ordering a product. And, from a business standpoint, we're really looking for validation, right? We were looking for the signal that this product itself was really what people wanted. And the only way you can do that is by offering somebody the opportunity to buy it. And we were in high-level partnership conversations with a lot of different, micromobility companies, so bike share, scooter share, things like that. And the piece of data that we were really missing was, well, do people actually like this? Everybody we talk to says it's awesome. If we poll people, if we do surveys, if we do focus groups, we do everything, we get great feedback. But nobody has actually physically purchased the product from us yet. And so, we decided that we needed to prove that that's really what needed, that this was really something that people wanted to not just have, but physically pay for, which purely in a business sense is obviously critically important.
And what is the expected delivery date?
So we're shooting for the February-March timeframe for shipment delivery.
February, March 2019.
Correct.
And are you going to actually be able to deliver the products? Because that happens on crowdfunding. You talk about how crowdfunding's great to generate momentum, but sometimes products are delayed or not shipped at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're at the moment on time to ship the product within that time frame. Of course, things can happen, and you can't say with 100% certainty, but essentially, we were kind of in a different position, right? So we had already raised, over $1 million of venture capital. We already had a team, we already had patents, we had everything done. We'd been working with our manufacturer for nearly a year when we launched the crowdfunding process, and that really allowed us to use it more as a function of being able to fund the purchase orders and things like that without having to dilute the company to do that. When you're an early stage business started by two college students who don't have a nice mug to put or even own scotch, banks aren't going to give you money. Venture debt's not an option, things like that, right? So you have to find a way to actually fund the purchase order. And so, that's really where we used and leveraged crowdfunding effectively, was in doing that. And so we were in a different spot, right? A lot of other companies just kind of, put an idea out there and then they go develop the product after the fact.
You led me to my next question. You're two college students. People are investing millions of dollars. You're obviously very smart. You spent a lot of time developing this product, but business savvy. It's a crazy world out there. How are you going to navigate the business world? I'm not saying it's not impossible. People have done it. But other people, there are challenges. And I think a lot of people, even veteran entrepreneurs, struggle with that.
We are first-time founders. We are recent engineering graduates. To the world of entrepreneurship, business development, where do we have to stand? I think the tone that Jordan and I have always tried to emulate is we might not have all the answers, we might not know everything, but we're willing to learn it. And that's really resonated well with advisors, friends, experienced entrepreneurs who, they'll, whether it's on their board of advisors or board of directors, investors, or even just friends who will answer a emergency phone call in the middle of the night about a problem, they really respond to not only our mission, but who we are as entrepreneurs, who we are as a company, that we will learn, we want their advice, and we want to learn from it.
And how big is the team right now?
So our full-time staff right now is about 7, and we, between all of our vendors and agencies and whatnot, have probably about 50 people across that space part-time working. So there's a lot of things, right, that we don't need full-time. We don't need a full-time graphic designer. What we definitely do need is a full-time photographer for our Instagram account, which is what we were joking about earlier. Our Instagram account needs to improve. That's just because this is what happens, right? So talking about business, you're going to come naturally with some strengths and some weaknesses. I'll admit Dave and I's weakness is 100% Instagram. Dave's rocking like 98 friends on Facebook, so
it's a strong 98.
It's a strong 98 friends.
Don't let anyone tell you it's not quantity, it's quality, Dave.
Yeah. Don't worry, I make fun of him for it all the time. But essentially, there are things that you're intuitively going to be good at. There are things that you're going to struggle with. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, nobody's born anything, right? Nobody woke up one morning and became like a successful CEO or a successful CTO or was able to start a business, right? It's all about whether or not you can leverage what is around you. And for that, I mean, Dave and I are incredibly grateful to, really the core network that we were able to leverage through Virginia Tech's program. And then as we started to grow through UrbanX and the other accelerators, there's an advantage to when you are doing something passionate, genuine from the heart to make the world a better place, people want to help in any way they can. And they'll go above and beyond somebody who's just, trying to make a quick buck. And I think that there's this misconception that entrepreneurship has this huge financial upside and there's like this whole money thing around it, when there really isn't. I mean, it's really not about that. And if it is, it's not going to work. First of all, you're going to eat like ramen noodles for like 3 years. So like your opportunity cost, on that basis is huge. There certainly are situations where, you can be efficient and make a couple bucks early on, but it's significantly more difficult in the hardware space, particularly a regulated hardware space where you have to produce a product that'll pass a regulatory compliance. That's going to inherently have a significant lead time before you're actually going to be able to drive revenue.
Well, you certainly touched on, Jordan, that entrepreneurship isn't necessarily glamorous. It doesn't have to be money focused. And I think that your mission certainly really comes through, particularly because it affects you guys and it affects a lot of people in this world. But money is also important.
Right.
Helps you get off the ground, helps you develop all these things. How much money did you guys need to raise to develop this product?
So we raised a seed round of about $1 million in 2017. We closed that in October. And really, we needed actually, we needed more than that. Really at the end of the day. And we, we did our accelerator, which helped in that context. But really, actually, what it's about, I think our viewpoint on this is, and something that I'm actually genuinely really grateful for, and I think that is a really powerful thing, is when you can create a system where what's good for you and what's good for your investors is also good for the world. That's very powerful. So, creating this kind of, what is innately capitalist, but at the same point has this social wellness component to it, right? Investors that decide to invest in us and join our team are going to do very well. And they're also going to know that at the end of the day, they've saved somebody's life. And that has value beyond money. But at the same time, we still have to hold ourselves to the standard of delivering as good or if not better returns than any other competitive company that's out there who's competing for their time and resources.
How much more than $1 million did you need to raise?
So we definitely were in a situation where we could have leveraged more resources. We were able to basically secure some credit and whatnot. We're able to get through it. But there's a cash crunch, right? I mean, running a crowdfunding campaign is expensive. There's a lot of things that you need to do. Content's expensive. Facebook ads are expensive. All that stuff is expensive, and you have to pay for it with investment capital up front. You don't get unlike traditional e-commerce where you might get, you order the product and then, the payments process at the end of the day, you get the cash in the bank. You don't get it for like 60 days.
You guys certainly developed a collapsible helmet that is revolutionary, but I searched on Amazon and there are other collapsible helmets. Obviously, they're not as cool as yours or as great, but it's certainly a space that people are looking at, it would seem. Companies Morpher, Overraid. How are you going to navigate this more crowded space?
So I think really for us at the end of the day, we are focused on consumer experience in a way that no other company is. We care so deeply about the product and usage, like I was talking about earlier, in a way that very few other companies have spent as much time on. And at the end of the day, it's our belief that when you take technically brilliant teams and create an environment where they can be obsessed with consumer experience and product experience, that's when you get really great products. And I think that's something that, some of these other companies in the space haven't done. And I think the consumers really spoke to that, right? We sold like 3 or 4 times as many helmets as any other one specific company in crowdfunding. I think we sold nearly 20,000 helmets in our crowdfunding period. We represented, I think, 50% of every dollar raised for a bicycle helmet across both crowdfunding platforms, even though we were only on one. And we're incredibly grateful for, the response that we got. And I think that's because we really deeply cared and we took the time to say, hey, what does somebody actually want? Not what do Dave and I want, not what does our team want, but what do people really want? And what are they telling us that they need in their day-to-day life to live a safer life? And, this is really the product of that. And I think it spoke, very loudly that we had done a good job of answering that call.
So usage, obviously a big theme to your mission. I want to give you guys a couple numbers. 2017, 24 cyclist deaths in New York City, here in New York. And in 2016, nationally, there were 840 cyclist deaths nationally. I don't know the international figures, but what does this product, what does your mission mean to New York and cities around the world? Because I know personally I'm not riding a city bike because I'm not carrying around a helmet. And I feel like there are a lot of people probably in the same way and people who have obviously been tragically struck. What do you think that means for cities?
Yeah, so I think from a city perspective, we really care about system level safety, right? How do we think about safety as a whole? And it's not just fatalities, right? It's traumatic brain injuries, it's concussions. So, bicycle helmets are very effective at reducing the probability of getting a traumatic brain injury. And, TBIs are serious. It's worse than a concussion. It can have lifelong injuries. It's not like breaking an arm where it heals and life goes back to normal. And even if it doesn't set correctly, maybe there's some phantom pain every once in a while, life goes on and you're still you. Traumatic brain injuries have the potential to take away who you are as a person, which is very different than almost anything out there, right? And then, of course, fatalities are of course, the ultimate worst case outcome. So for us, it's really reducing that in cities, but it doesn't just have to be city bike, right? It could be, dockless bikes, it could be scooters, it could be any of these, platforms where you're riding, 15 miles an hour, you fall off and you might hit your head on a fire hydrant or a curb or something like that. And that's really what we want to do is create something that you can just throw into your bag the same way you would take an umbrella when you think it might rain that day. Throw your helmet in your bag because you think you might want to ride between a meeting or to a coffee shop or to meet a friend. And you can just throw this and make it seamless into your day-to-day life.
What's it like working together? You guys have known each other in college, and any funny stories being just college buds now starting a business?
Too many funny stories?
Yeah, I'll hold back from sharing.
Dave would like to share the funny stories from the past 36 hours. Definitely not a good idea.
No, I would say to quickly glance over the first question of funny stories, but I would say the biggest thing for us working together is the friendship or the relationship matured from college friends to startup to running a business together. I think one of the keys is when we're making decisions about $100,000 in tooling and some big decisions is we can still laugh about what happened with him on New Year's Eve. And
of course you had to throw that in there.
And you can still you still have that aspect of the two co-founders still have that kind of escape from the stresses of the startup.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I'm going to go in a different direction. I think
Jordan's getting away from New Year's Eve as quickly as possible.
It worked out in the end for him, so.
It's going to make me regret saying what I'm about to say, but you know that. No, but seriously, I mean, I think that, we're young, right? We're both 24 years old, turning 25. It's kind of that quarter life crisis. But, one of the things I'm most grateful for is, experiencing a level of commitment to something that you're passionate about this young has been interesting, right? I mean, you don't really know going into starting a company who your co-founder is as a person, and you're going to experience things that you could never imagine. You're going to be tested as an individual on so many levels that you could just never plan for. And to go through that and find out the person that you decided a company with is not only somebody that you're, incredibly compatible in terms of running a business together, but it's somebody that can be, that support structure, and that you innately trust to, always be looking out for your best interest, I think is so powerful. And it enables so much. And it's definitely not something that you can take for granted. Now, of course, they're still going to make fun of you when you do dumb stuff.
How do you divide the responsibilities between the two of you?
That was something that, to a large extent, kind of divided rather naturally, where Jordan's father's an attorney, my dad handles logistics and shipping. So to a lot of extent, when it comes to, say, legal, employee law, that kind of stuff, it divided naturally. Both of us having an engineering background was invaluable to start. But then as the company grows and roles progress, fortunately in that sense, it kind of divided naturally between, say, product development and business development.
Well, David Hall, Jordan Klein, thank you for stepping onto the New York Launch Pod and sharing your time with us. You have a wonderful mission. Certainly hope that you have much success. How do people find out more about you and Park and Diamond and get one of those helmets and check out that Instagram account?
So go to our website. It's parkanddiamond.com. From there, you'll be able to pre-order the product. Definitely follow us on our social media channels, at Park and Diamond. And I promise the social media content will get better. We really appreciate, all the support that we've had. Also, to everybody that backed the campaign on Indiegogo, you really can't do this without such a viral and loyal customer base. And for that, Dave and I are really kind of internally grateful for that. And, we just can't wait until we delight everybody with the product in a couple months.
And if you want to learn more about the New York Launch Pod, you can visit us at nylaunchpod.com for transcripts of every episode, including this one. And if you are a super fan, David and Jordan, are you guys super fans?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us here.
If you are super fans like David and Jordan, please leave a review on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. It is greatly appreciated, and it does help people discover the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New York Launch Pod. For more information, please visit nylaunchpod.com.